have one. This committee was originally convened over the summer because of two main reasons. One of them being that it had been 5 years since the last examination as to our high school of record. And when we did it the last time, I think it had been 9 years prior to that. And the committee then made a decision that it would make sense to take a look every 5 years just to see that we were doing the right thing for Jamestown's students. So the 5-year mark had arrived, and coincidentally, or maybe not, the Narragansett School Committee sent us a letter requesting that we update our review of their schools. They were one of the schools we had looked at 5 years prior. So the committee decided to limit the scope of the review to those two schools. I've been asked by a number of parents why we chose to limit it to 2 and why not look at all the schools we looked at before. Again, I'd be happy to talk to anyone who still has that question, but a variety of factors, partly logistics, partly the ability of the school district to even accommodate our students, their interest in doing so. There were a few reasons that we chose to limit it to Narragansett and our current school of record, North Jamestown. Our procedure was decided on over the summer, and we determined that we would combine some subjective analysis with objective analysis, and we did pretty extensive visits to both schools. We spent a full day attending classes at each of the two schools, and we had the team members observe classes with which they had some familiarity with the subject matter, so they could better assess the level of instruction and what was going on in those classrooms. So we sort of divided it up. The other benefit to that is we didn't have a big collection of strangers in any one classroom, so I think it was less disruptive for the students to do it that way. And then we tried to catalog our observations. We had a common form with which to report our observations to the rest of the group, so we all collected data on the classes we observed using a common form, and then we collated all that information, and subsequent to the school visits, the day of classroom observations, and we also observed things like lunches and advisory and things like that. We did not just go into subject area classes. And then after that, we had another day with some staff and administration at each of the two buildings to answer questions that had come up as part of our initial visits, and to review any other questions that the review team might have come up with as part of our meetings. So we did spend another time at each school getting more questions answered. And then we collected the answers to that. We looked at a lot of data. We do have a source page at the end of the report so that you can look at some of the same data sources that we have. Most of it is public data. We've collected it into a form that we hope you'll find useful. And then our charge was to report back to the school committee on the data that we had collected and what we found. And that's what we're all doing here tonight. Does anyone have any questions at this point about the procedure? I didn't know whether we should wait and just take questions at the end.
So what should we move the mic?
Yeah.
Is it kind of, it's movable, isn't it? Okay. Thank you, Julia. You gave a good picture of what we've been doing as a committee for the past few months. At the beginning of the review, you'll see current enrollments, October 2009 enrollments for both schools. That again is public data. And if you look at the size of each high school, Narragansett has a total of 478 students. North Kingstown has a total of 1655 at the moment. So it's about a 3.5 times difference. North Kingstown is about 3.5 times larger than Narragansett. And as you're looking through some of that information, you can keep that in mind, that there is a 3.5 times difference in the student body. We're going to begin the first section of the report. It's about programming, because we really were a programmatic study. We spent our time really looking at the programming in both high schools and looking again at the outcomes from that, at the data. As you would imagine, with North Kingstown being 3.5 times larger than Narragansett. There are far more course offerings, I think even you'll see in the course offerings in the extracurricular. And in terms of what is now, and if you have high school students, you'll hear a lot about proficiency, graduation by proficiency, which is a new state regulation. So both schools have in place the process in order for students to graduate from high school. Both schools have a portfolio process where students have to keep track of at standard or above standard pieces of work electronically. They have to have so many pieces by their senior year. You're going to see that. They will also be part of doing the senior project. So there are differences in how both schools approach that, but it's regulated by the state and both are acceptable to the state. We didn't focus a lot on that particular piece, I would say that up front. Again, looking at the courses, I think when you look at the English courses, you will see that they're fairly similar. You're having an honors and AP English, you have there'll be remedial when needed, and there'll be college prep in both schools. If you look at mathematics again, the standard mathematics courses are there at both schools. There's an AP calculus at both schools. There's a year-long algebra for students that need that at both schools, full year or 2-year extra time. Science, there are similarities. One thing at Narragansett that they did have is they have an agriculture program in their science department, which is nice. We saw a lot about that. The kids were enthused about that. Social studies, fairly similar. One difference being that Narragansett does have now a 4-year requirement. Social studies is 3 years, but now for this graduating class it's become 3.5 years, we have found out at North Kingstown High School. World languages, both having French and Spanish. Narragansett also has Italian, and North Kingstown has Portuguese and Spanish. Excuse me, and German. Thank you. I want to go back for a minute and just sort of talk about the visual arts program. Jamestown kids are very interested in the visual arts. And as we looked through, in the current senior class this year, we have 11 of our Jamestown seniors taking AP Art. AP Art is not offered at Narragansett High School. We also have in the arts, we have 30, in the senior class currently, there are 30 students taking other art courses, the current seniors. So we have, and we know that historically, that kids that from our school are very interested in the visual arts, and the visual arts program is definitely stronger and more extensive at North Kingstown. Both schools, I think, are very proud of their music programs, as we are proud of our music program here at Lawn. I think there's been a lot of increase in Narragansett, so I think, again, there's similarities. There's more music theory, more music-type courses, though, offered at Narragansett versus, at North Kingstown versus Narragansett. And the electives, again, when you're looking through the report, you'll see that the elective courses are far more greater selections. And we know sometimes that all electives don't run at both schools. So keeping that in mind, what we did is we looked at the program guides for both schools and just listed all of their offerings. And AP courses. Over the past 2 years, it's been as high as 10 up at 11 at North Kingstown, and we found 6 AP courses at Narragansett High School. So again, North Kingstown High School offers a greater variety of AP classes. And again, the next section we come to in the book talks about the classroom observations. Julie did a good job of explaining that we spent a full day, each member of the committee, going in and out of classrooms, varying times. Sometimes we stayed 15 minutes, sometimes we stayed 40 minutes in a classroom. I think that we got a good sampling of classes, but I don't think that we came to any conclusion we could not rate instruction in one school as better than instruction in the other school based on what we saw in those 2 days. What you will see in the chart, though, is that class sizes vary. They vary in both schools. So a lot of times in English or a math class, it's a required course, there's a higher number in both schools, you'll see that. So again, when you have time, you can look through those numbers of the samplings that we saw. Okay, at this point, Sally's going to talk about athletics.